an IndyCar, but because I get to cover the pre-race right there from Pagoda Plaza, I pay attention. Year after year, I'm paying attention. I've gotten better at this, yet still I take a look at Team Penske, what they have done here with these changes made to the rear attenuator. Did they cheat in basically fusing two pieces together? As a layman, I'm like, well, it's not allowed. Well, they were trying to gain an advantage. Yeah. If it's not allowed by rule and they did it anyway, that seems to be cheating, but it's cheating in a way that's very obvious to see. Tony Katz, good to be with you. And then I came across this story over at Motorsport. Penske's modifications aren't entirely the problem. The fact that no one caught them is. Bozi Tatarevic joins us right now, a writer over there at Motorsport. It does a bunch of sports writing, including at Road and Track. This is an interesting argument that the action of Team Penske is not the issue. The issue, I think, as you're saying it, is IndyCar itself. First, let's start with the basic. Does everybody understand what happened with this rear attenuator? Break down for us what it is Team Penske did here.
Good morning. Thanks for having me. So let's dig into the components here. So the rear attenuator is the big rectangular piece that sticks out of the back of the car. Its purpose is if the car backs into a wall, it absorbs some of the energy to make the driver safer. On the sides of the attenuator, early last year, Dallara, who's the supplier of the part, added these plates that were glued onto the sides to basically strengthen the attenuator in response to some of the changes that were done to the car because of the hybrid. These plates were of a similar material. They were carbon fiber, just like the attenuator, and they had glue applied to the back of them, and then they were glued to the sides of the attenuator. My understanding is once these parts got to Penske, some of the people there didn't like how this looked, that it was haphazard, basically, to a regard with some of the glue. And they used bright blue glue, and knowing how they operate, they like things to be polished. So they told some of their fabricators, hey, can you guys clean up those glue lines, put some of this, I think some kind of black putty or epoxy here to close it up. So to kind of start with, the plates were actually adhered to the component already. This is not something new they did. They just cleaned up the edges. But to be fair to the rule of the law, there is a listing in the rule book that has a list of allowable items that can be smoothed out, and the rear attenuator is not on that list. So they did violate the rule. The issue from my perspective, go ahead.
Just to be clear, nobody is arguing, Bozi, that they didn't violate the rule. There's a clear violation that has taken place here from Team Penske, going back to last year's winning car with Joseph Newgarden, and I think what you're arguing is maybe even before that.
So this stuff was done as soon as these changes were made in early 2024. The bulletin from Dallara came out in January. What my argument is they did violate the rule as far as modifying a part, but I don't believe that they gained a performance advantage. I believe that somebody thought that this aesthetically needed to look better, but everything I've looked at CFD, which is computational fluid dynamic maps of the car, which shows airflow and pressures over the car, and there is no airflow that's really significantly catching that portion of the car because it all escapes from the back of the car before it ever reaches the attenuator. So what most people were arguing earlier this week is that they had some performance advantage. I disagree with that. I believe that this was a breakdown in process where Penske people wanted things to look better and assumed that they could modify this part aesthetically, and nobody caught it for over a year. And now I think that it was maybe beneficial to some of their competitors for them to be caught specifically during this qualifying session because there wouldn't be enough time for them to fix it. And I think because Penske owns all of these things, from the team to the series to the track to the engine supplier, I think that they really just had to throw the book at the team and went even beyond what the rules say really should be done as a penalty in order to show fairness. But
Hold on,
my
let me stop you right there for a second. Talking to Bozi Tatarevic of motorsport.com. Now we're getting into a unique place, because if there is an issue, this should be about how IndyCar has been working tech inspection to say, how dare Chip Ganassi notice. Now you're reaching into a whole new different thing there, and I don't think Ganassi's wrong. Ganassi's argument is there's a rule. These people don't follow the rules, and maybe they don't follow the rules, Bozi, because their last name is Penske.
That's something that I think can be argued by anybody, and I think that's the big issue here is the optics of it. Is even if other people had done the same thing, it's always going to look worse if a Team Penske a person does it, because of all these connections back there. So I think that's part of kind of the core issue here. And even though this might not be a performance advantage because it was done by these people and rightfully brought up by other competitors, it should have been brought up, honestly, long ago. But because it was brought up by competitors, they had to act quickly in order to kind of show that they're not being lenient on this. But the reality of the whole situation is these parts have existed for well over a year. I've shared some photos in my story and dug into the details of it, and they've gone through technical inspection many, many times, and they just have not been found. And the only reason they were found now, from my understanding, is because people specifically brought them up to technical inspectors recently and raised a bigger fuss about it, and eventually they decided to look at them and to look back at the rule book and decide, hey, we need to penalize this right now.
So now this brings us to a question that hasn't been asked much. I don't know if I would allow Penske to get off the hook here. And the idea of larger penalties, because it's Penske, I believe there has to be an answer to the question that only Roger Penske can do. You can own the series or you can own a team, but you can't do both. And I think that is becoming more and more apparent every single day, with now a couple of years of some level of quote-unquote controversy involving Team Penske. But as you're bringing it up here, our question has to be, how does IndyCar work its tech? How does it work its inspection? And is this being, is there a standard being applied? Do they work too quickly? Are they not manned up enough? In your view, is there an issue with IndyCar tech and how they examine a car before it makes it to track or comes off track?
I believe that they could use additional resources. And part of it's just the scheduling and the nature of these events, and things need to move quickly. So what they do for bodywork, since this is kind of the discussion here, is they'll have aluminum templates, which are these, big pieces that fit over certain parts of the body. And it's kind of a go, no-go type deal. If the part fits, if the template fits over the part, your part is good. If it doesn't fit, you fail, you need to fix it. Or, you're disqualified if it's after the race. What happens in a lot of other series is there's actually imaging of the cars. So NASCAR, with their optical scanning station, really does the best, most efficient job of this, because every single car gets scanned multiple times during a race weekend, before qualifying, sometimes during between sessions, and obviously after the race. Even IMSA does this to an extent with handheld scanners scanning the GTP cars. And what this does is it creates a digital image of the entire car, and then they have a master CAD file that has an image of a car that's perfect, based on what the spec is. And it can create a heat map and say, hey, this part should be shaped like this, but these red areas aren't shaped with what the computer expects them to be shaped like. And I think that would alleviate a lot of these body type penalties, where they could compare stuff and have a black and white for a red and green image to say, hey, this is all the stuff that looks like this, and this is what it's supposed to look like, and we need you to fix this, or whatever other penalty there might be. So right. I think that's a big part of it, is that there's just not enough resources, whether that's having enough people available or having the tools to be able to do stuff quickly, like some of these computerized scanning tools. So they have to do the best with what they have, and sometimes they miss stuff.
Bozi Tatarevic of motorsport.com. You can follow him on the Twitter X as well. Bozi Tatarevic, B-O-Z-I. Just start searching. You'll find him. I appreciate you taking the time to be with us. Matt Bear has got